Hi, and welcome to the Avidknits podcast. My name is Sarah, and I'm going to be your host today. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry, both as Avidknits. I have a question. Do all other podcasters spend like 20 minutes rearranging their house so they can record and then filming their intro 6 times? Guilty. So I have wanted to do a podcast for a really long time, and for some reason or another have always talked myself out of it. And I figured that I should just stop doing that and give it a go, right? So a little bit about me. I live in Houston with my husband and my son and my black lab. My husband's family is all from here. He's lived here his whole life. I have dragged him out of state a couple of times to prove that there is life beyond. I, however, am, I suppose, originally from Texas, but I have spent my entire adult life trying to get out of this state. And here I am. Real talk, I like Texas quite a bit. It's home. And I surprisingly really love Houston. I'm from the Fort Worth area originally, and honestly, I thought Houston was dirty, and I didn't want to ever be here, and I never saw any reason of coming here. If you fly into Houston and you spend time on 45, and that's it, you're gonna hate it. I have since found out that Houston is the third most diverse city in the nation, and that we eat out more than anybody other than LA and New York. So there are over 11,000 restaurants and things to try, which means that being a foodie, that's really exciting, and probably one of my favorite parts about the city. I homeschool my child. He is 7. His name is Hector, and I really love that. I love being able to take him places and for him to meet people and hear their stories. And it's been very opening for us to really create that bond, and I love watching him learn. I think it's fantastic. I do think that that's going to change here probably in the next week or so. He's been asking to go to public school. He did a small stint in a preschool when we lived in Idaho a few years ago, and he now equates that to all of school. He doesn't really understand that there's not going to be carpet time and stories and songs, and there will be like math problems. He hasn't quite figured that out yet, but I figured that the best way to let him find out is to throw him in the deep end. So he will go for definitely the rest of this year, so just a couple of months. Let him see what he thinks of it, and if he just utterly hates it, then I guess we'll have to work something out. I personally like homeschooling. I think it's great. But yeah, we're at a transition time, so, he's at a really good age to try it and see what he thinks, as opposed to waiting until he's, 8th grade or 9th grade, and I'm probably struggling with the material a little bit, and he's, really wants to be able to get out there. He needs, he's very social, so his socialization is not a problem, and he has cousins his own age, but I think they're all girls, so it would be really fun for him to have more peer interaction with both boys and girls, and in a different setting, kind of away from me. And that's not a detriment to him. That's me, actually. I was married before, and when my son was 2, I was widowed. So I was widowed at 27 and a single mother. And that was a really rough patch, and it's taken me a very long time emotionally to kind of get back on the boat, I guess, right? So things in my life are wonderful now. I have a wonderful relationship, very close family. We live in a good city. We live in a place we want to live. We own a house. Things are very settled. But I find that now that things are very settled, I'm very hesitant to rock the boat. My entire life has been a series of cover your ears, fuck it moments. So I joined the military when I was younger. I had some family issues that kind of led me to be on my own at 16. And I joined the military basically as soon as I could. And I went to Missouri for basic, and I broke a hip while I was there. So I was there for a lot longer than I should have been. And once I healed out, I was sent to South Korea. So I got to see Asia, which was wonderful. I got to travel a little bit. It was beautiful. Definitely go if you're ever wondering about a place in Asia. I know everybody goes to like Hong Kong and Japan and stuff, but I think that there is something really to be said about Seoul, South Korea, and I think it's very undervalued. I loved it. It was beautiful. What a wonderful place. When I got back, I met my first husband, and we got married and moved to I came back to Texas, I'm sorry, and then we moved to Georgia, and then we moved to Kansas, and then he passed. And then I moved back to Texas and accidentally met my current husband, and things have been great. But my father was military, my grandfather was military. I have had a very mobile existence, I guess. Tend to move around a lot. And so my decision making is usually like, yeah, that sounds good, let's go for that. And I find that, especially now because I have a child, and especially after what happened, I tend to really think things through. But not in a good way, not in a, oh, let me plan this out and it will work fine. It's more of a, let me think about it until I freak myself out and then talk myself out of doing it so that nothing changes. That's not an existence I care to live for the rest of my life. I'm really trying to break back into that person I used to be, I suppose. And I'm hoping that by having the podcast and pushing myself to do things that make me a little bit uncomfortable, like talking to a phone in the middle of my yarn room, that maybe that will push me out just a little bit more. And yeah, I really, I hope it goes well, and I really look forward to interacting with some of you guys and really meeting you and checking out this community. My community, as far as knitting, I learned how to knit in 2015. I've crocheted for years. I've learned off and on. My grandmother was a very big crocheter, but she was left-handed, and the mirroring technique never worked for us. I could never learn. So then an aunt on the other side of the family after the accident and the funeral, I'm sorry. My husband died in a motorcycle accident on his way home from work. I don't remember if I said that or not. I'll check it in the editing, but I don't think I said that. This is what happens when you record things a couple times. Things start slipping through the cracks. So I learned how to crochet, and I really picked up crochet as a form of solace, I guess, consolation. And my very first project was a really large blanket, and I at the time was making single crochets wrong. So in a single crochet you loop up and then go back through the whole loop up again, and then that's your first stitch. Well, I was basically looping up once and then closing the stitch, which would be a slip stitch. It would be a chain, like a slip chain type thing in crochet. So when I finally figured out what I was doing wrong, I was like halfway through a blanket, and then I didn't want to do it over again. So I just continued to do the blanket the way that it was. I can usually do a throw with, I don't know, we'll say 6 skeins of a Hobby Lobby yarn, because that's what I was using at the time, was acrylic. And I think that this blanket, ended up was like 11 skeins or something. So it's super heavy. It's very dense. It's very thick. But I still have it. So it's here. So it's kind of a single crochet and then kind of like a slip chain type thing. And it's massive. I'm not going to pull it all out. We'll be here for days. It also right now has a big hole in the middle of it that I have patched twice. Back when I thought that you could knot your ends. Poster child for why you shouldn't do that. So when I moved to Texas and I met my husband, my husband works a lot. He works in the manufacturing industry, so he's a machinist, which means that he creates metal parts. He runs the machine that cuts the metal. He programs the machine to tell it what to do. It's all very technical, and I don't understand any of it. I know you can make knitting needles on it, which I think is something he should get into, but he's apparently his job frowns upon that. In the high season, though, he'll work 12-hour days, and then usually half a day on Saturday, so our time is a little limited. And when we first got together, I kind of came front-loaded with a family, and basically said, hey, dude, if this is going to work, you need to take some time off. Like, you've got to do something else for a little while, because I don't get to see you, I don't get to know you, my son doesn't get to know you. What can we do? And so, we were fortunate to be able for him to take a couple months off, and we traveled incessantly. And it was the first time he'd ever really been out of Texas, which was wonderful. It was so much fun to be able to be the person to, I guess, drag somebody out of their comfort zone and open their eyes to what else is out there. So we did Savannah, Georgia. We did the Grand Canyon. We did, what else did we do? Oh, we did Portland, Oregon. We did Washington, and we just kind of like doodled up in there for for quite a while. So I think we did all of that within the first 3 months of knowing each other. And then we came home and we made a decision of hey, let's move, let's try it. And he picked Boise, Idaho, which I was really surprised by because Houston has 7.5 million people and Boise doesn't. So we moved to Boise. It was wonderful. It's a beautiful city. If you've never been, Idaho does have more than potatoes. If you go 15 minutes north of Boise, you're in the Pacific Northwest forest and the mountains, and it's just utterly amazing. It's beautiful. So we went there, and I found out what a local yarn shop was. I had never known about that in Texas. It's not that we don't knit. We definitely do. But yarn stores are a little bit thinner on the ground. The knitting culture isn't as prevalent, and those of us who do knit, we tend to travel. So, or crochet. This is definitely not an exclusionary podcast, okay? Like if you crochet, if you weave, if you tat, if you embroider, I can't do any of those things. I can crochet and knit, and I can't do any of the needlework or the weaving or the macrame. Fantastic. That's fantastic stuff. I'll try to be a little more inclusive in my speech. But the yarn stores that I had always been to had been out of state. I had never really looked for that. I don't know why. It never occurred to me to look for that at home, but I just didn't. And I found a really sweet shop in Meridian, Idaho that is no longer open called Knitwit. And I kind of got politely bullied by the ladies at the yarn table to knit instead of crochet. Like, why was I only crocheting? I should learn how to knit too. Not one was better than the other. Just you should do both. And what really inspired me to do that was the sweaters. I saw a picture of, it's called the Coastal Pullover. It's by Knitbot, and I, for the love of, cannot remember her real name. I am so sorry. She's a fabulous designer. She does a ton of stuff. Either I'll think of it or I'll pop it down. And I wanted to knit that. Spoiler alert, I've been knitting for like 4 years and I still haven't knit that sweater. So I really need to get on that. I really need to do that. Hannah Fedig. There we go. I got it. I knew I would come up with it. That was what inspired me to learn how to knit. So Thanksgiving of 2015, I put down my crochet hook and I picked up some needles and I taught myself off YouTube. And yes, I did have a local yarn shop who would have taught me. And Cheryl was a very gracious teacher. I had some extra time, and I just taught myself how to do it. It's not a big deal. And I knit everything I could get my hands on. I knit a lot of cowls, actually, and I did that because I was able to try out new stitch patterns and stuff. So I would say that within my first 2 months, I probably knit, underneath the camera is a clear box of stuff that I've knit prior, so I'm counting. Sorry. I probably knit 6 to 8 different cowls, and some of them have lace, some of them have mesh, some of them have color work, some of them, that's where I kind of learned how to do things. And then when Cheryl closed her shop, there was another store up the road from me called You and Brew, and it was a fabulous shop. It was a fantastic shop. And it also ended up being my employer. I ended up working there for a while, and I loved it. The women that I worked with were amazing. The owner of the shop, her name was Britt. She was wonderful and fantastic, and she had the greatest selection of yarn. She had some commercial, she had some American, she had an entire wall of regional, and I just remember thinking, this is how you should do it. Like, this is how I would do it, and it was always warm and airy and cozy and wonderful, and it was amazing. It was absolutely beautiful. And so I was able to try a lot of different fiber types, indie dyers and commercial. And so that was my introduction to, I guess, woolly or merino, or what you would say is like nice wool. Because before that had all been acrylic, especially as a crocheter, you eat through so much yarn that it's harder to justify really nice fibers. And I was not a crocheter of garments, so this is not a blanket generalization in any way. I did a couple of washcloths, but I don't use them. I did a bunch of blankets. And then I did like cowls and hats and stuff like that. Worked out really well for me. But being from Texas, it doesn't get cold enough here to really wear accessories, I suppose. Or that's just not my style. I don't know if one fed the other or not. But living in Idaho, where it finally got cold enough to wear those things, then I kind of got into like the cowls and stuff. It's just not really my style, I think, is really what it comes down to. Every now and then I'll throw something on under a jacket, but garments have been my big one. Anyway, so that was where I learned to knit, and it's been oh my gosh, ever since. So, at the risk of telling you my entire life story in this video, I'm going to stop there. So that's a little bit about me. I absolutely welcome your questions. If you want to ask something, feel free in the comments below. I'm pretty open book, so as long as you phrase your question in a non-aggressive manner, I don't see any reason I would have a problem answering it. If I don't feel comfortable answering it, I probably just won't, or I'll let you know I wasn't comfortable with that, and I'll tell you why. I'm pretty open, so it should be fine. Yeah. Okay. So, what I'm wearing, we'll start with that. I am wearing the Zweig by Caitlin Hunter, and I knit this last year. I was really late to the Caitlin Hunter party, you guys. Like, this had probably been out for a year and a half. Everybody and their dog knit it, and I just wasn't feeling it. I don't really care for big oversized sweaters. And so it took me a long time to go through the project pages and to find people who had knit it as more of a spring top. No, I'm lying to you. I am totally lying to you. I live in Houston, and I drove the 2.5 hours to Austin to Hill Country Weavers, and they had a trunk show with Candace of Farmer's Daughter Fibers and Caitlin Hunter of Boylan Knitworks, and they brought the goods. They brought everything. And she had 2 versions of the Zweig. One was the oversized crop, and then the other was a little bit of a longer torso with 3/4 sleeves. And I was in love. It was fitted, it was beautiful, and I had to have one. So of course I didn't buy yarn for that. Because why would I, right? That would be terrible. So I came home, I stashed over a little bit, and it was one of my first garments. Not my first, but one of my first, and I wanted a solid color for the body, and so this is knit out of Cascade Heritage Sock with Silk in the plum colorway. I'm pretty sure it's plum. And I did do the I don't know if you can see this. I did do the texturing on it. I'm sure you can't really see that because that's my elbow. But I do the texture cross cables. They're super simple. If you're thinking about making it, I really do recommend doing that. And then the yoke here is Autumn Rose, Antique Rose. Claire's gonna kill me. It's by Autumn and Indigo. It's in her sock base. She's gonna kill me. It's gonna be terrible. Anyway, and I really love it. I knit the 40-inch size. So my bust is 40 and a half maybe. So I knit it to fit. And I just stopped it when I followed the pattern exactly. I stopped it when I felt like it was long enough, and I did 3/4 sleeves. I did tubular bind-offs because stretchy. Yeah, and I can't think of really anything else. Oh, the one thing that I wish I kind of had known a little bit more about when I knit it was like helical knitting, because on the back in the middle of the color work right here, there's a divot. You can tell where my beginning of round was. So that's something I wish I would have changed, known about back then. It's not a big deal. I'm probably the only one that notices it. Welcome to knitting, right? So anyway, that's what I'm wearing. So on to, I guess, what I'm working on, which is another Caitlin Hunter pattern. And, but I don't like DK weight sweaters. There, I said it. I don't like them. I run pretty warm and I like to layer, so I really appreciate a fingering weight sweater. But the Ingalls sweater is not a fingering weight sweater. So I made it one because that's how I roll, I guess. It is not perfect. My math is a little bit off. So if you're on Instagram, there is a knitter you should totally follow, and her name is Selena. Her handle is Dank Fiber. And if I think of it, I'll put it down here. She is, in her description of her bio, she says she's a ghost knitter. She's a sample knitter for shops. And this woman, I swear, can knit a sweater in 3 days. I'm sure she doesn't, but it sure feels like it. She's knit 2 or 3 of the Guthrie sweater, that all over color work from Caitlin Hunter, and oh my god, they're beautiful. She did 2 of them in fingering weight, and she was so kind, and I guess she got enough questions about it, and she finally broke down. It was amazing that she put how she did her math and how she converted in her the notes section of her project pages. And so I took her advice and I swatched and I looked at it and I did the math the way that she said, and my sweater was a little bit too small. It wasn't super small, but it turned out smaller than I had really expected it to do so. So I ripped it all out and I did it again. And I did it mainly because when you go from a DK weight sweater to a fingering weight sweater, your motif is a little bit, I guess, smaller maybe. And so I did it because the motif that I got was relatively small. And then after the yoke, I had to increase like 2 different times in order to accommodate for my bust size. And by the time I did that, I was like, well, I could have just knit the bigger one and my neck would have been more open and I would have liked that a lot. So anyway, so I did that. And so I am knitting the 56 inch size. It's the large size. And by the time that my math works out, I basically get an extra small, which is like 42, maybe a 42 inch. I should really take better notes before I get on camera and start talking about things that I can't remember. I did a provisional cast on because I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my neckline. I will probably do rib, but I really like a tubular bind off, and it's easier for me to tubular bind off than it is to cast on because of the twisting. It's not my thing. There is a way I know, Brooklyn Tweed does this in a lot of their patterns, that you provisionally cast on and then do a tubular, but it really only works if your project is flat. I'm not knitting this flat. I'm doing that on a sweater for my husband right now, but I didn't do this one flat, so I didn't want to do that. Anyway, so this is the Ingalls sweater. And so you can see that it's got these really nice little, I don't know, some people have called them succulents, some people have called them snowflakes, some people have called them flowers. Argument could be made, it looks like a bug. I see stick bug, but that's fine. You see what you see, right? And I'm making it, the main color I'm using is graphite in hedgehog fibers in her sock base. And I will say that about hedgehog that it is a little bit thinner of a sock base than what I find a lot of yarns to be. Fine, just make sure that if you use it, that maybe you accommodate for that, or that you expect that anyway. Because it is so dark, I did wash it first to see if it would bleed, and it did not. But as I work with it, I find you can, it's actually really cool. It's looks almost like fingerprint powder. You can tell exactly where I hold the needles and exactly where the yarn curls around my finger, and it leaves little traces of black. So I don't expect it to bleed when I wash it, but I will probably use a color catcher just in case. My contrast color is by Life in the Long Grass, and it is their fine sock. So both of these are 75-25 merinos. And the colorway is called Simper. And it's just this really beautiful kind of rosy lavender, or it's like an orchid color almost. It's just amazing. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's got these little tiny pops of dark specks, and I'm fascinated by these colors. This and like the rose gold and the really dusky colors. I have no idea how people do this. I've dyed yarn. It doesn't ever turn out like this. I really wish it did though. So that is my work in progress. I just finished the yoke. You can see my little lacy increase thingies. The only modification that I made is that you're supposed to put little lace yarn over things right here in between the motifs. I read a lot of reviews that basically all that did was allow you to see the floats behind it. And so I just chose not to do that. I don't need any holes across. I don't need any more attention attracted to this area. You do you if you want it. It's cool. Yeah. So that is my work in progress, and since this is a little bit backward, I'll refine this the next time that I record, and hopefully it will go a little bit smoother. I will stamp it. My notes say what order I'm supposed to go in. I just didn't do it. So, yeah. So next, I think I will talk a little bit about stuff that I have finished recently. Like I said, I've been knitting for a while, which is going to be good for me on the first few episodes as I get used to doing this. I'll be able just to kind of pull from a tote or off of my desk and be like, look what I made, and it'll be fine. So I have quite a bit to get through. If you ever have any questions about anything that I talk about that I have made, personally, I am really good about updating my project pages on Ravelry. I'm not super awesome at putting in progress pictures or pictures at all, but I try to be. And I generally tend to keep pictures on Instagram, so please feel free to go there. If you have any questions, DM me, let me know, whatever. I'm here. I have my best friend, okay, that is a terrible story. Let me try that again. We moved to Texas. My father moved to Texas when he got out of the military when I was in fourth grade, maybe. So me and my mom and him moved from Georgia, and we came here. My dad got out of the military there. And I started fourth grade, and there was a girl in my class. And she was in my class every year until we hit high school and started doing, block classes. I had block scheduling, so you did 4 classes per day, and then the next day you did another 4 classes. And then my sophomore year, they were like, well, we're not going to do that anymore. We'll go down to 8 classes a day. And that was when we stopped being in the same class. But we were always the two most academic, maybe. And her name is Camille, and she and I have maintained a friendship all the way through these years. We lost track a lot after I ended up on my own, and then I ended up in the military and stuff. But we kind of reconnected. We reconnected after the accident, and she was just very, very supportive and very wonderful. And it's really amazing how an experience like that can really pull people into your life. I lost a couple of friends, not for any reason, I guess, but because people don't know what to say. And at 27, I was dealing with things that most people don't deal with until they're in their 60s or 70s. Loss of a spouse is ideally something that you deal with when you're older. And so to be that young and to have to deal with something like that, I think really scared people of my generation. Like, I think that we, especially as Americans, we don't really talk about death, and we don't really talk about grief. And so we kind of push each other aside, unintentionally, because you don't know what to say and you're really afraid of saying the wrong thing. And, there's that human nature thing of I want to do something to make you feel better, and if what I'm doing isn't making you feel better, then I don't know how to respond to that. Whereas when you're grieving, the fact that you sat next to me on a couch was, good enough. The fact that you didn't think that my grief was contagious. I feel like people do this, especially, and then, for pregnant, if you're pregnant, too, sometimes people treat you if I touch you or talk to you, I might get it, and it's no, it's not how this works. But anyway, so it really brought her into my life, which I thought was really wonderful. And she loves handmade. She works a pretty high pressure job. She works in the marketing industry. So she does not have a lot of time for handcrafts. She does macrame, and I actually have a piece of hers, but I haven't hung it up in a really special place yet. So I will show that next time probably. Anyway, but I knit for her because she lives in Oregon and goes snowboarding on Mount Hood and has seasons and all these things I wish I had. But I don't, because I live here. So, anyway, I knit her tons of stuff, okay? But most recently, I have knit her a Glacier Park cowl, because we're on a Caitlin Hunter theme today, apparently. This is all about Caitlin Hunter today, apparently, and I want to make sure that I stay on brand. I don't always knit by her, so don't worry, there will be other stuff. But this is my Glacier Park cowl. And it is knit out of commercial yarn. So it is knit out of Barocco ultra fine wool. And I'm sorry, I don't have one with me to tell you yardage or anything like that. If you need to know, you can just ask, or you can Google it. That'd be great, right? And it's just in white. And then I believe that the blue color is called, I don't know. beach, sea something. I really don't remember. I'm so sorry, you guys. This is terrible. But yeah, anyway, so it turned out to be, it's really, it's a fingering weight cowl. And it's stranded color work. So there's my floats. Aren't they pretty? I really enjoy this cowl because there's very few places that you have to carry your yarn or catch your floats for more than, I don't know, 5 stitches maybe. I tend to catch my floats every 3 stitches, just because I'm that person and that's just what I like to do. But yeah, so it's very warm and it's very squishy and I really, really love it, and I haven't sent it to her. But I have a collection of stuff for her, so she'll be okay. It'll be like a care package. I'll get her a coffee mug. It'll be fine. The other thing that I have knit for her recently is also out of Barocco, but it's out of Barocco Vintage, which is a worsted weight. Most Barocco yarns are going to be a wool and acrylic blends, and I do have one here, but again, I don't want to stretch and reach it, and then the framing, you guys, the framing. It took me forever to set this up. Anyway, it's a hack on 2 different patterns. This one, it's a hack off of the Graham hat by Jennifer Adams, and then there's another pattern, the timber hat, maybe it's the timber hat. I'll again on the screen, I promise I will get it. And next time will be better, I swear. But it is basically it's just rib and like seed stitch, almost like knit purl textures or whatever. I like it because it appears to be a brioche, but it's not. It's kind of a faux thing, which is really fun. Knitted twisted stitches, and so that's the hat, and then underneath I have a little pop of color from some scraps in my stash, and it looks like that. So it's super slouchy and lots of fun, and I really love it. And of course, because I made it, the next time that it was cold out, I took it out for a test run to make sure that it was gonna, quality control. It's like tasting your own recipes. You got to make sure that the cookies are gonna be good, right? So anyway, she's really going to love it, and I'm really excited about sending it to her. She's the one person in my life, other than my husband, obviously, who has full knit privileges. So she just sends me pictures and says, hey, can you make this happen? And we have a standing, she pays for the yarn, or I give it as a gift or whatever. So I kind of told her that whenever she would stop sending me ideas, maybe I would get her stuff to her, because she's requesting faster than I can knit, you guys. It's happening, but that's okay. I'm also going to stick a pom-pom on it, and I got these off Etsy, and I use a lot of different Etsy shops for pom-poms, to be honest with you, so I don't really remember who this was. I think it was probably from Holy Cowl. I know one of these was from Holy Cowl, like, holy, like, you are whole, and I got that recommendation from the Grocery Girls, so I know for a fact that they have a link. I'll try to put one in. I need to make a place for show notes. I have this black and gray kind of wolf fur, I think it was called, or husky fur. I don't really remember. And it is a popper, which is going to be fun. I've never used one of those before. So I don't really know how that works, but I'll read the directions and I'll figure it out, right? Somebody's got a YouTube video. YouTube knows everything. And the other one is this really pretty cream with brown tips, and it's just super floofy. And that one's a tie-on, and I don't know, so I haven't decided if I'll palm it. I'll probably just send her both palms. I knit her hats pretty frequently, so she has the palms and she can attach them herself when they're tie-ons. I don't have to sew those on. And if not, she can sew. She's capable. She can do it herself. It's fine. It's like sending, knit gifts to your friends and being like, you got it. I was watching... Maybe it was Ellie of Skandir and Amy Florence of Stranded, I think. Anyway, one of them knit socks for a birthday gift, but didn't know how big the other person's foot was, so they just included the heel color and said, here, you do it. I cut the stitches for you. Or you can cut the stitches and do it and put in your afterthought heel, and I thought that was just really sweet. Anyway, one last thing I have going on the needles is the Sizzle Pop Cowl by Leslie Ann Robinson, who is from Corpus Christi, you guys. She's right down the road. I didn't know that for a very long time. Anyway, she has beautiful brioche designs. So this is my shawl. And it's a very simple brioche. I thought it was very good. I wouldn't call it the first brioche pattern you should do, but definitely the second. It's really not hard. Yeah, so this is out of 2 different fingering weight yarns. This one, the dark purple, is called Archangel, and it's from Malabrigo. It's a sock yarn. It's 75-25, I'm sure. Pretty much most of my stash is probably 75-25. And then the other one is a club colorway from Autumn and Indigo. And it was last year sometime, October, September maybe. It's called Goodbye Chlorophyll. And so it's basically got the same colors that the other one does, just in different ratios. And it's really amazing how well that they paired together, you know? So yeah, the brioche is coming along. It's contrasting really, really well. I started this quite a while ago and put it down, and I figure if I tell you about it, then that will shame me into finishing it, right? And that is living in a bag by my very sweet friend in Idaho. Her name is Mariah, and she has a bag company called Knitted Niceties. I don't know if you can read that, but I hope you can. And it's this beautiful, almost like stamp printed tree fabric, and it's got pockets. It's got pockets, you guys. It's really great. And this really beautiful striped lining. I had seen one on her Instagram and had talked about, I had just mentioned how adorable it was and how much I loved it, and she gifted it to me. And then after we moved for, I think maybe for Christmas or for Hector's birthday or something, she sewed him a set of monster pajama pants, and she was very kind and just gifted me a whole matching set. So I have a sock, I have a wedge, I have a large, a larger wedge, and then a sock, and then a notions. Yeah, there we go. Anyway, and it does come with a clippy and a lanyard, but my son likes to play with those. He thinks that they're fun for towing trains and trucks. So it's in a toy box, you guys. It's here somewhere. And yeah, I think that that's about it. So I haven't really figured out like what my little special section will be, but I do kind of want to just quickly touch upon I guess kind of my standards and expectations for the podcast. I am very big on boundaries. I have discovered that, I don't know if that's because I grew up as an only child or if I was just my parents were not totally hands-off, but were very, go. And so for me, it was always really helpful to know what were my lines, what could I not do, and what could I kind of do, like where could I not go? Because then I could do whatever I wanted in between that. And I really work really well that way. So yeah, I just want to lay down a couple of guidelines and some boundaries for the podcast. I will try to keep it as PG as possible, you guys. There is no guarantee. I don't censor for my child. I don't know, I was raised that I'm going to say what I want to say, and you're going to know whether or not that's appropriate for you as a kid. And I think that empowering my son to know what is appropriate for himself and what is not extends that thinking into his relationships with his peers of, is this am I allowed to do this? Should I do this? Is this going to affect somebody? And so I don't censor. We just have a conversation of what he can say, and whenever he says something he shouldn't, then we address, hey, you shouldn't say that. That's not for you, and here is why. And sometimes it's as simple as it's a grown-up word and I said no. And if he has questions, we'll discuss it, I guess. But for the most part, you're 7. I said no. We're going to go with that, right? So language might get a little bit colorful, but it shouldn't be too bad. Let's see. Racism and inclusivity. If you have been anywhere on social media, ever, especially Instagram, whether you're a knitter or not, then I'm sure that you have been privy to some of the commentary and the opinions surrounding this very large open discussion that we have had about race and inclusivity in our knitting community and the lack thereof for people of color or for people of maybe non-normative, so whether that may mean disabled or not neurotypical or non-binary or whatever. I do just want to put out there and say that I really do want this to be a very welcoming space, a very wholesome space. There's a very popular meme saying right now that says, I will respect your opinion as long as your opinion doesn't tread upon others' existence or their lives. a little bit of tiny background. My husband is a first-generation American. His father did come here illegally the first time he crossed that river. And unfortunately, a couple of his travel companions did not survive. They did not make that crossing. And he did choose to go back, and he was able to come here legally and able to do it correctly the second time. For any of you who are sitting at home thinking, well, you should have done it right the first time, you're not necessarily wrong. That process is not as cut and dry as what the government would like you to believe. We have friends who have been trying to get their papers for 20 years. We have friends who have been scammed and swindled by lawyers saying that they're going to help them, and they've lost thousands of dollars. We've had people who it costs 20 grand at least to do this. Anyway, we're not going to get on that tirade about this, okay? What I am going to tell you is that our nation is made greater by its immigrants, and if you don't feel that way, then I thank you for checking out the podcast. That's great. I do not do racist commentary. Comments here will be moderated, okay? And any disgusting comments and any inappropriate comments will be addressed, deleted, blocked, whatever. So yeah, let's extend some grace to one another and have constructive conversations and make room for each other, even if we don't really understand the next person. But hate mongering is not going to be tolerated, and it will not be allowed. I'm sorry. I find it really distressing that I'm having to say this on the internet right now. But we are a worldwide community. And we, especially as Americans, have a lot of problems. And it's not just us. Everybody has them. And until we change the thinking that comes around women's roles in business, gender bias, religion, what is acceptable, what is not, trans, LGBTQ communities, non-binary, until we stop and really change our thinking around that whole scenario, I honestly don't know that any of those situations will ever be resolved or any of those conflicts will ever be resolved. So I think it's up to each and every one of us, even if you feel like you're not doing anything, know about yourself. Like, pay attention to the words you use, pay attention to the language you use. If you find that I am not being inclusive enough on this podcast, or if I say something that kind of rubbed you the wrong way, or you think I could have worded better, I would love to hear your thoughts on that. As long as they're, respectful and they are constructive and making this a safer place for everybody as a whole, okay? We're going to get off that conversation. Politics stress me out, and what's going on in our nation means that everything is politicized, and if you think it's not, then you're not reading what's going on. You need to wake up, please, and make it better for your fellows. So let's just all move forward to make things better for each other and for our fellows. So thank you very much for checking me out. I hope to see you come back. If you liked this video and you'd like to see more, there's a subscribe button. Can you give me a like? Notifications if you want things to ping you. I don't know. That might be a little far, you guys. I don't have to stalk you. It's cool. You'll find me. And yeah, I'm hoping to do this probably every week, every 2 weeks. Kind of depends on what life throws at me. But yeah, it was wonderful spending the afternoon with you, and I hope to see you soon. Bye.